Hello, uh, good afternoon. This is Mojibur Daftori from Finland. Welcome to the British Bangla News. I am Dr. Mojibur Daftori. I am an educationist and also the writer of Massive Career Success How to Create the Life of Your Dreams. The title of today's discussion is Mahatma Gandhi and the Power of Nonviolence. Today, my guest is Mr. Timo Vittala. Welcome, Timo.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and Timo is a Finnish sociologist, writer, and peace activist. He has extensively written and taught about nonviolence and peace building in the world for over 2 decades. Uh, he has written a book, Finnish book, which is we can translate the title as "The Power of Nonviolence: Stories of Bravery." There he writes about Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., Greta Thunberg, and many more other role models of peace in the world. He has written a book about Bosnia's Sarajevo and a book called Flying Finn, Finnish Civil Society Actors in International Sphere. He has also worked as an educator, Civil Service Center of Finland, for over a decade. And he has taught nonviolence, globalization, development, history, etc. Mr. Timo Vittala has been a peace activist. He has been playing leadership role in Finnish civil society organizations and hold different position there. He's the co-chair of Finnish Christian Peace Association and trustee of the Peace Union of Finland since 2007. He is the former General Secretary of Lovisa Peace Forum, an annual gathering of Finnish civil society organizations for peace. He was there as the General Secretary from 2008 to 2016. Today, as our topic today is about Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi and his non-violence. So Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi is well known throughout the world as a messiah of non-violent change. His experience in fight, he got experience in fighting apartheid in South Africa and colonialism in India. His unconventional weapons included nonviolence, that is satyagraha, the experiments with truth force, self-purification, and also self-restraint include that. And Sorbodaya, that is the welfare for all, non-cooperation, civil disobedience or and hartal or shutdown in extreme cases. Mahatma Gandhi's mentor Gopal Krishna Gokhale had termed Mahatma Gandhi as a man made of stuff of which heroes are made. He is lovingly called throughout the world Mahatma or the Great Soul. In 2007, United Nations General Assembly resolution declared 2nd October, the birthday of Mahatma Gandhi, as the International Day of Nonviolence. In 2019, began the celebration of 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi across the world. To to inform our audience about Mahatma Gandhi, there are many young people, students who may not have idea about Mahatma Gandhi. So I'm telling something about his little bit of background. Mahatma Gandhi had a colorful life. He was a migrant for many 2 decades, over 2 decades, and he fought for independence of India through nonviolent means in India. He was born in Gujarat in a tradition-bound family of India, and he sailed in for London in 1888 as a 19-year-old young man. He obtained a law degree from London in 1891 and returned to India the same year. And in Bombay, he tried to practice his legal profession in India, but in 1893, he went to South Africa as a legal counsel of an Indian Muslim in apartheid South Africa. He fought apartheid in South Africa through nonviolent means involving migrant Indians there. In 1915, he returned to India to fight colonial rule, and Salt March is one of the major events how he practices nonviolence with many other events. In London, the migrant life of Gandhi changed him tremendously. In London, Gandhi came across in close contact with London Vegetarian Society. He read influential books of Western writers such as Henry Salt, John Ruskin, Leo Tolstoy, and learned about different religions, the teachings of major religions, and mixed with people of many faiths, and creatively responded to apartheid as a migrant in South Africa. Mr. Timo Vittala, as I mentioned earlier, he's a Finnish writer, sociologist, and peace activist. So I will begin to talk to him by asking the question that how are you coping with the corona situation in Finland?
We are doing good. Thank you, Dr. Doftori, for asking, and thank you for inviting me to this program. Our COVID situation in Finland is pretty good. We got scared as the whole world in spring, but right now it looks good for us, and we are worried though about the situation in India, especially. I have heard very bad news, and United States and many other places in the world.
Okay, and let's come to the topic of today. Why Mahatma Gandhi is so important to the world after 72 years of his death? What is his legacy in this world?
There are many aspects. I could start by telling about the book by Erika Genovet and Maria Stepan. They published it 2011, and it went through different revolutions from 100 years time. They divided the revolutions and also independence movements to non-violent and violent. They came up with 100 about non-violent campaigns and 200 violent campaigns. And they came, to Erika Genovet's surprise, they came to conclusion that these non-violent campaigns have been, during the last 100 years, more than double as efficient than the violent campaigns. So they proved scientifically and comparing these 300 cases that non-violent is efficient method of social change. There is the other aspect that Gandhi was stressing is the spiritual aspect of non-violence. Non-violence as lifestyle, non-violence as the path to truth, and as a soul force. And also Martin Luther King, as a Christian priest, he was talking mostly about this principle side of non-violence. But there is definitely both. It's more efficient, as proved, and it is spiritual, as Gandhi in his writings pointed out. And Gandhi didn't came up with the non-violence. It's much older. It's in the Bible. It is in Hindu holy scripts and many other sources already written down these principles of non-violence. And there is lots we can learn from this. From the perspective of revolutions, they have become much more common during the 2010, especially after that, 2010 to 2020, more and more common, perhaps thanks to this literature that we have about nonviolence. Erika Genovet's book, but also Gene Sharp's and others. Unfortunately, also the leaders, the dictators have been reading this. It might be because the efficiency have dropped down. So they have become more common, but not so efficient anymore. This is an interesting phenomenon. But okay, this is only one aspect that about the legacy of Mohandas Gandhi, which we know better as Mahatma Gandhi. The other one is the amazing fact how he talked about how he criticized materialism already then 100 years ago, and how it fits so well during our crisis today with climate change and the extinction of animals. And he has the solution to that. He was writing about that already 100 years ago, and definitely from that aspect too, we should follow Gandhi.
Okay, thank you, Timo. Please explain to our audience Gandhi's concept of truth force, non-cooperation, and civil disobedience. Why those are important for our current world?
Well, he didn't like the term passive resistance because Tolstoy was using the term passive resistance, and Gandhi was writing letters to Tolstoy and thanking him from his writings and got lots of ideas from Tolstoy. But what comes to this terminology, Gandhi didn't like passive resistance because it reminds you of being passive, and this is about being active. Being active is a very central point of satyagraha, as he called it. He didn't even like calling it so much non-violence because this is a negation. If you say in English non-violence, you think about the violence that is not there, but it is much more. So satyagraha, which means truth, clinging to truth, or soul force, as he many times translated it in English. It is something very, very active, and it is something very positive. And in my book, I put the principles of nonviolence, which Gandhi has been writing, and also Martin Luther King and Michael Nagler, professor in Berkeley University. They all have written down these principles of nonviolence, and I have put them to three categories. And one is dignity. And I love the word dignity, and unfortunately in Finnish we don't have that word dignity. It's beautiful word, and it means that it's both sided. It's my dignity and your dignity, and you should give dignity, you should give respect even to your enemies. This is the power of nonviolence. And you should not humiliate the others, and you should not be humiliated yourself either. So this dignity is one, and the other one is being active. So as I said, not being passive but being active. And the third one is honesty. That you, for example, this principle of civil disobedience, which came from an American author, Henry David Thoreau, much earlier than Gandhi. So the good question is, how does this breaking the law, how does it make, what is the difference between civil disobedience and breaking the law? So the answer is, with civil disobedience, you don't try to avoid the punishment, and you are open. You are out there with your own name and own face. You don't try to. You quite the opposite. You don't try to avoid the punishment, but you try to seek publicity, and you want to tell people who you are and why did you do what you did. And the aim is to change the law, the unjust law. There's two different things. There is what is morally right and morally wrong. That's one line here, and the other one is what is lawful and what is illegal and what is legal. And it is important to make the difference, and sometimes legal things are immoral, and the other way around. There might be some things that are legal, but they are not morally right.
Yeah. So from your talks, I can clearly see that this non-violence and soul force, these are the weapons of the strong, not the weak. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. And in the name of my book is The Power of Nonviolence, but also stories of bravery. And I'm not, if you go to a fight, or if you are a soldier going to war, so that everybody knows that you need then bravery there. But I would say that you need even more bravery to use nonviolent methods, to go to a situation where there's a risk of violence, but you decide to not to use that.
Okay, thank you. So it is paradoxical that Mahatma Gandhi's lack of success in career as a lawyer in India was one of the major factors that made him a great soul ultimately. What shaped or transformed Mohandas Gandhi as a messiah of nonviolence, and what are the major influences on him?
What a brilliant question. Thank you, Doftori. Uh, yes, he was very shy when he was child, extremely shy. And even as a young adult, when he was studying in London, uh, he was shy talking to people. And going back to India, he didn't, as you mentioned, he didn't succeed with his lawyer career. He was too shy to speak in public, and he's considered as the one of the greatest, most influential people during modern times. And what made this change? That is a very good question. And who are his influences? So Tolstoy is definitely one. Tolstoy written books which everybody knows, War and Peace and Anna Karenina, but also many other political, philosophical, spiritual books, leaflets.
Yeah.
And these Tolstoy's principles of simple living, vegetarianism, pacifism, and anarchism, they made great influence on Gandhi. Tolstoy's writings are extremely honest, and you can, when you read Tolstoy, you can sense that this guy is critical not only to the society but also his own thoughts. He's writing, he's suspecting himself all the time, and making sure he follows honestly through what he's thinking. And Tolstoy himself was born in a rich family, and was drinking and gambling and enjoying or trying to enjoy the life of a very person who has lots of privileges. But he got depressed, and he didn't find meaning of his life, even though he had everything that people usually want to have. He had money, he had friends and influence. And then he found meaning of life from simple life. He gave up alcohol and meat eating. He gave up all luxurious life, and said that if you want to be happy, you should build with your own hands, build a building with your own hands, and make food, work in the fields with your own hands, and fix your clothes with your own hands, and not having servants around you, and not this luxurious life. And it was very similar situation for Gandhi. He also was born in a rich family, and surrounded by these servants all his life. But after reading enough Gandhi, and Tolstoy, after Gandhi reading enough Tolstoy, what happened in South Africa, he made his life much more simple. And the first this kind of ashram he built where they lived, where he lived together with his not only his family but also his friends. It was called Tolstoy Farm, and they lived according to the Tolstoy principles there. Respected every person, no matter the religion, gender, or background, that was a quick change that happened to him. Well, I have now mentioned Tolstoy. You mentioned several other influence books that were important to him. In his biography, it's also called My Experiments with the Truth. So he was following the truth, and he was not ashamed of changing his opinion. In Finland, we have, for example, we criticize lots of politicians of if they change their opinion, as if that is immoral thing to do. But Gandhi said it's nothing wrong. You gather more information, you learn, and you change. When you get more information, when you experience things, then you change your opinions also. So I think this was the key, that he was following the truth, trying to figure out what the word is about, what is this about, and this was his conclusion, that it's the non-violence.
Yeah, thank you. I think you have talked very nicely about his influences. I think, what do you think about the role of the London Vegetarian Society? Because this is often overlooked by many authors around the world about Gandhi. What kind of influence
Yes,
had
yes,
on Gandhi's mindset
yes.
or openness to the world?
It was hilarious thing that he came to London. He was in 1888, and he was dressed white clothes totally, because he thought Europeans clothes dress like that, and his religious circles back home didn't like him traveling to Europe, because they said Europeans drink alcohol, they eat meat, and they are not truthful for their wives. They run around, and they thought it's a bad place to go. So, but even with that critic, he went to London, and it took him a long time to find this restaurant, because there was no Google Maps at that time. And these vegetarians at that time in London, they were older men with long beards, and lots of connections to Tolstoy's thinking and theosophy group, and it was as it's a good point. It was very important place for him. He, for example, was critical to Christianity at that time. He had connections to other religions, many religions. Or even during his childhood, he writes that in his temple, Hindu temple, back home, when he was child, the priest was reading not only Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu holy script, but also Quran, and side by side, and it was normal situation, and not only Muslims and Hindus living together peacefully, but also Sikhs and Jainism and other smaller religions was in the same coastal town where he grew up. The Christians came from outside, and they didn't respect the local culture, he felt, and that's why his attitude to Christianity was negative, until he found Tolstoy, and then Tolstoy's explanations of Sermon of the Mount made big impression on him.
Yeah,
and also in the society, he had possibility to explain about his vegetarianism, and talk about that and think about that in a new way. So you are right. It was a very important place for him, this vegetarian society in London.
yeah, thank you. The history of the world is history of identity-based conflicts, that is, racial, linguistic, and religious differences. Mahatma Gandhi developed 17 different identities of his own as a migrant in foreign lands. It is said by Ram Guha, Indian historian. Why multiculture is why this multi different identities is very much important. One person can have 10 or 20 different identities and they cannot be in conflict. But in traditional sense, when we look at the world, they cannot put two identities together in individual or in the society. So what is the cure of this? Is it multiculturalism or something else?
I think multiculturalism is natural, and this nationalist thinking is not something that we have always had. It's a new thing. It was born in Germany 1850s, 50 in that time, and it spread around from there. And it is, I would predict, it's weakening because our problems today are global. We have the global warming, we have nuclear weapon problem, we have a pandemic, and the problem with the technology. Like I'm believer of technology. It is very great things. It allows us to talk like this. It is many positive things, but there is lots of risks, and these risks and these problems I mentioned can only be solved internationally. If nations think like Donald Trump, that they think only short-termly about their own interest, they are not serving their own interest. If you want to be true, Harari said like this, that Yuval Noah Harari, professor of history, he said like this, that if you want to be true patriot today, you need to do global cooperation. You have to do global cooperation. We don't, as a humankind, we don't have any other chance. As you mentioned, every individual have different identities, and this nationalist identity is just one of the many. I live in Lapinjärvi town, so I have Lapinjärvi identity, and I was born in Häme district, and I have Häme identity, and I'm European, and I'm Finnish citizen, and I'm global citizens, and they are all important to me, and we need cooperation in all these levels. I'm not sure if I agree that the history of humankind is a history of these conflicts. I recommend book by Rutger Bregman, a Dutch historian who wrote a book called Humankind. I really loved that book, Humankind. And it describes the world from a different perspective, not from the conflict perspective, but from the cooperation perspective.
Yeah, I think majority of the history books are written in that way. It's about conflict of ruling classes or ruling families. So as history, as we know, is more about conflicts. But this is good point that you mentioned, that it can be seen in other way as well.
Yes, and Gandhi pointed out this, that he was reading news himself a lot, and even in South Africa, it's very possible when he lived there that he was reading about the Finnish civil resistance against the Russian Imperium in the beginning of the 1900s, and so Finns might have a small role in the development of Gandhi's ideas and the birth of Satyagraha in 1906. So he was reading news regularly, but he pointed out that news and history books also are many times collection of violent events, but that doesn't mean that we are surrounded by violence. It means that it is something exceptional. Violence is something exceptional, and the more violence, the more attention it gets. And if there is a conflict, we all the time have conflict with humans. We have different interests, and if we solve that conflict non-violently, talking. So there is nobody. It's possible that nobody knows that you had conflict with your friend. But if you use violence, if you use fist and you have a fight, then you get the attention of your neighbors. And if you use gun, you get even more attention from the whole media is writing about that conflict you had. And the more violence you have, the more attention it gets.
Yeah.
And this is very important to point out and to know when you are following the news, that
Yes.
it doesn't describe the truth of the world, but it describes the unusual events
Exactly.
of the day.
Exactly. Thank you. While fighting against an opponent, people often forget to build the bridges through commonalities among them, commonalities with an opponent. Mahatma Gandhi volunteered as an ambulance corps leader of Indians during British South African government's Boer War. What lessons the contemporary world can learn from it? That if you even are opponent of somebody, still you can lend your support to the right causes.
Yes, yes, and you should know your opponent and in a good way. I have several examples of that, and Gandhi might have had influence definitely for Nelson Mandela. Of course, Gandhi had influence on Nelson Mandela in 1990s. Well, earlier when Nelson Mandela was jailed, he was spent in jail 27 years, and during that time he learned Afrikaans language, the language of his opponents. And through learning the language, he learned about the culture, and it saved the country. It totally saved the country. It was a very close civil war in South Africa in 1990s. The African speakers, they were very much afraid of this shift to democracy, and the very key moment where Nelson Mandela prevented civil war was when he went to visit this army general, and for this general's surprise, he spoke his language and paid respect to him and his culture, and knew lots about the culture of these people, and it was a very, very crucial moment. And I personally have met both or two persons from Israel, Palestine, who both had to learn. The other person was an former ex soldiers of Israeli secret police, and he learned Arab language, and through that language learning he reached out to this Palestinian community, and then in the same event, this is called no, now I don't remember the name of this peace organization. I will come to that later, perhaps. Anyway, this Palestinian ex-terrorist or ex-fighter, he also learned the language in the jail, and that was a key role how he reached out to Israeli people and came to this conclusion that peace is the only way.
Thank you.
Combatants for Peace is the
Yeah.
organization name of the brilliant organization.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really enlightening for me and probably to many in the audience. Gandhi was a religious person, a deeply religious person. And he was a religious pluralist in practice. And he inducted certain people in independent India's cabinet, first cabinet. For example, Ambedkar was an anti-caste leader or the untouchable people. He was made a law minister. And staunch secular Muslim leader Maulana Azad as the education minister. And openly atheist Jawaharlal Nehru as the prime minister of India. And Gandhi's party, Congress party, has had Muslim, Christian, and Parsi as president of the largest and oldest party of India and the South South Asia. Barack Obama got elected as the first black president of the United States in 2008. Is Europe ready for a black man or a woman or a Muslim as the prime minister of a country within EU?
I'm sorry. Now I missed your question. The last thing.
Is Europe ready for a black man or woman or a Muslim as the prime minister within the EU?
Yes, yes. I hope so. I really hope so. It is time. And in United States, there is this big movement of Black Lives Matter. And then there is a big movement of Me Too campaign. And both are, the goal of both of them is equality and same rights to different people. And I'm really happy to see these movements. And from Gandhi perspective, I must say that I'm surprised how successful they have been. I have stressed out how important it was for both Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. that they had very concrete goals of their campaigns. But I feel like these modern social media movements gather huge amount of people and have already made big changes in society and had a great influence, even though there is not one leader, there is not one organization behind this, there is not one concrete goal. Like I'm gonna compare like Martin Luther King Jr. His first campaign was in Montgomery about the bus segregation, to end the segregation in Montgomery bus system, public transport system. And bit by bit, like very from small problems, they developed further. But these modern campaigns are different, and I'm happy to hear how they have influenced the discussion in Europe, and I hope to see the first black prime minister in Europe or a Muslim prime minister in Europe.
Yeah, thank you. In many Muslim societies, we see dictatorship and rise of religious fundamentalism that deny rights of minority religious groups, women, and Muslim sects. Is there a Muslim role model for non-violent change that youths can follow? If they are, who they are?
Yes, I have my favorite. His name was Abdul Ghaffar Khan, and this book is in Finnish, but there's his picture. Abdul Ghaffar Khan from Pakistan. He was a friend of Mohandas Gandhi and lived around the same time. He had a long life, which very long time of his life he spent in prisons. First in British prisons, and after the independence in Pakistani prisons. And he was very charismatic leader, and he at the same time when Gandhi was only planning and had these writings about non-violent army. So he actually built one, and not a small one, but 100,000 women and men participated to his non-violent army. And they usually don't call these groups army, but with Abdul Ghaffar Khan, it is exception. I think it's good to call it army, because they had these camps where they had trainings. There was many similar things to traditional armies. They had these training camps. They had uniforms, and they were practicing obedience, and it was very hierarchical system they had, with the exception from normal armies that they didn't have weapons, and they made vow that they are not going to use violence, not even against their enemies. They were fighting against the Brits, but they used non-violence methods. And if you broke this vow, if you used violence, then you were kicked out from the organization, and
Okay.
that was a big punishment.
Yeah.
They did civil disobedience campaigns against the British, and they built schools. The education was very important for this group, and I would like to see more publicity for this
Yeah.
brilliant fighter of peace, Abdul Ghaffar Khan. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think our audience, particularly the youths can learn lots about this Muslim role model of non-violence, because we don't see very often many role models within different Muslim societies from South Asia to Middle East. But I hope this can fill the gap. This role model you mentioned can fill the gap in non-violent means of change. Mahatma Gandhi has millions of admirers across the world. In many countries, there are statues built in his honor. A bronze statue of him exists in Helsinki. However, a statue of Gandhi in Ghana was removed from a university campus, terming him a racist for his earlier comments on Africans. Is it the result of partial reading of Gandhi that failed to fathom his personal transformation in South Africa, which Nelson Mandela himself acknowledged? How do you see this?
Well, I'm very sad what happened in Ghana, and I have heard his critics, and I have tried to find texts from his books where he is racist, and I have failed to find them. That's not a proof that there isn't. It is possible. He was a child of his time, as everybody is. He was not perfect. He was not saint. None of us is perfect, and this is also one teaching we can have from these great role models. We can also see what they did wrong and where their thinking went wrong, and it is I think it's important to see them as people, and we should read them. We should learn from their wisdom and also learn from their mistakes.
Exactly.
And yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you. In this world, we see promotion of democracy at state level, while at international system, it is not reflected. Leadership in the world system is dictated by possession of nuclear weapons or veto power. We live in a mad world that is mutually assured destruction, threatening world. In post 1945 period, consensus period in the world is breaking down, and new power centers are emerging currently in the world. How to promote peace in this time of ambiguity and uncertainty, because this world structure is changing, but which direction it's going is not clear yet. And this is the time when many wars can break out. So how to make peace in this time?
Be active. Be active. Vote if any Americans are listening me. Vote. and elsewhere also. Be active, and we who promote peace should be more brave to repeat our message. I think the far right is very good at that. They are repeating their false prophecies, their lies. They are repeating, and spreading fear. And peacemakers many times are very careful, very critical of you. You don't post to Facebook things that you are not sure that they are correct, and this is a problem, because in social media you get attention if you are active. I say that peacemakers should be more active and more brave. Well, that is just one side. I hope there's not too much negativity and pessimism about this. Yes, bad signs. There are bad signs. Once again, I'm going to give you a book tip, and that is Hans Rosling, Factfulness. very optimistic or possibilistic book, as he himself put it, because he's describing how the poverty has gone down in the world since in 20 years it has doubled. It has went to half. The poverty in the world, amazing development, and also the life expectancy has gone up. The child fertility rate has gone down, and many other examples. His brilliant TED lectures are showing how the world is going to better directions. The only exception he has is the climate change, which is undeniable a big problem we have. We have problems and things are bad, but it doesn't mean they are not going to better. He says, he points out. Okay, what comes to the democracy, so it's true what you say, that we have democracy in many national levels, but in the international level we don't have yet enough democracy. I do agree with that, and Albert Einstein thought that is the solution to for example, nuclear war threat problem is the global governance. We should have a global government. That was what Albert Einstein said, and it's worth thinking. We do have United Nations, and we do have African Union and European Union, and we do have these international agreements and many other international organizations, and so often we forgot how well they work. I was just interviewing a researcher, Ritva Reinikka, who is a specialist in the economy of Africa, and she pointed out how good job World Bank has been doing with this COVID crisis in Africa, for example. But these things don't get in the news, and this is sad thing that people get so negative and they don't see the good development. Because they don't see the big picture. But if you take a step back and look how the world looked 200 years ago with the wars and with the lack of international cooperation. So we have gone, and even after Second World War, we have done a great success in international cooperation. I'm not so negative.
Yeah, thank you. I think from your point, I can clearly say that media has a more constructive role to play to give the message to the world of optimism, because world needs more optimism. World is not that dark as it is portrayed by some doomsday sayers. So it's good to be hopeful about those. The world has witnessed abolition of slavery, end of colonialism, and ban on use of landmines. Will it be possible in the future to abolish war in the world? How?
I don't know. Dr. I must say, I don't know if that's going to ever happen. And it's not key. It's not crucial, in my opinion. I think peace work is about to reduce violence and to prevent wars. It is possible to prevent individual wars, and it is possible to make the world that has less violent. That the direction is the most important for me. What's going to happen in 200 years? I don't know about that, but it's important we work towards a world with less violence.
Yeah, okay, thank you. What are the emerging challenges to world peace in this digital age? How peace movements in Finland and elsewhere are preparing to face those challenges?
Well, we have one problem is the autonomous lethal weapons, killer robots that are there's already, even in our cell phones, we have this facial recognition, and we have capacity more than those moon rockets had in the 60s in this thing. It's amazing. And there's lots of potential for good. And there's a Finnish person who wrote, Timo Honkela, who wrote a book about how these cell phones and artificial intelligence can work for peace. His book is called Peace Machine.
Yeah.
Um, but also it is very cheap and easy to make drone that carries this capacity and facial recognition, and then some kind of weapon. It is extremely easy to develop this kind of lethal autonomous weapons, and they are already building them. And this is weapons that do the decision of killing by themselves.
Yeah.
And this is one challenge we definitely have, and there is talks in United Nations to forbid them. There is support for this. United Nations Secretary General, for example, is supporting this, and many Nobel laureates and many countries. And in Finland, we are pushing our government to work for this agreement to kill these to make it forbidden to these killer robots to come forbid this. Like as you mentioned, we have managed to forbid landmines and chemical weapons and biological weapons. It is very obvious for everybody that those are that kind of weapons we should not have, and international community has managed to have a agreement of forbidding them, and now there is work in process for both killer robots and nuclear weapons, and we are supporting both of them.
Thank you. Thank you, Timo. In this digital world, we see the surge of xenophobia, hate speech, and violence, advocacy of violence through social media. What is the way to contain this kind of hate speech and these things? What's the way?
Facts. Well, facts, spreading facts, and being critical to the news sources. We should listen many different types of news and make a conclusion from those. That is one thing, and the other one, unfortunately, I must say, traveling. We live in a COVID time, and which is restricting traveling, and the other one is global warming, which is it's going to make traveling more difficult. But still, I am a big advocate of traveling, and you can. It is possible to do also ecological way, and after this pandemic, I recommend everybody to travel. It is a classic way of opening your mind. Getting to know new people, and be brave to when you meet strangers, foreigners, and people you don't know. You will learn that you can trust people.
Yeah. Okay.
That's my solution to the hate speech.
Great. Thank you. In Finland, as well as in many parts of Europe, integration of immigrants remains a challenge. What are your suggestions to authorities and immigrants to promote integration of immigrants in European societies?
Language is very crucial, and I'm disappointed how difficult it is for immigrants to find language courses. That should be obvious that the knowing the local language is the key to the integration, and of course finding jobs. And everybody from left to right, all parties agree with this, that we should have employment situation. We work for that. We have different ways to reach that goal, but the goal is common, and that is of course good thing. And definitely I hope all the employers will employ immigrants a lot, because that helps the integration. That is
Okay.
the key.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And this is the last question, because we are in 54 minutes we are talking. So, do you have any suggestion to students and youth across the world about how to build inner peace and contribute to the outer peace or world peace?
Yes, this is a good question, and the peace organizations around the world are there are peace organizations that concentrate on the inner peace, and then there are peace organizations who do work for the institutions, for the outer peace. And I think both are important, and as you put your question, so inner peace leads to the structural peace. Meeting people, yes, I could mention CISV here, Children's International Summer Village, which is a brilliant organization who helps children to meet each other from around the world. And I have been active in many peace organizations during my life, but I must say this first one that I participated as a child is perhaps the most efficient, best of all of them, because that helps you to understand when you are as 11-year-old and you play with other 11-year-olds from other countries that for weeks, that definitely changes your life. After that, it is very difficult to hate another culture, which is bizarre thought that you hate the whole culture. I mean, there are good people and bad people in every culture for sure, so this is the best organization for doing that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Timo Vittala. Timo Vittala is a Finnish writer, sociologist, and peace activist. And thank you for your valuable time for the audience of British Bangla News. Also, my personal thanks to you, Mr. Vittala. I thank you, the audience of the United Kingdom, Finland, Bangladesh, and elsewhere for staying with us. Stay safe. Thank you once again, Mr. Timo Vittala. It was my pleasure talking to you. Have a
Thank
nice.
you very much, Dr. Daftori. Thank you.